All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's event on experience management. I'm pleased to present our speaker, Joe Fugere. Hopefully, I said that right. I first met Joe at last year's HDI Service Management World, where I sat in his presentation. He was co-presenting with Unisys on experience management, and I've invited him here today because I was really impressed with his webinar, or sorry, his topic of experience management. Is one that I know that we're all interested in. I think at this point, we've heard of experience management. We know what it is. We know how important it is. But Joe's going to help us sort of, discover how we can get started and some small steps. So I'm pleased to have him here. This is sort of an encore but updated presentation from his session at last year's Service Management World. And he is currently the IT Service Director, Service Center Director at University of Alaska Anchorage, where he's responsible for ensuring the service desk and field services team deliver outstanding performance as well as raving fan customer service. I love that, raving fan. Prior to joining the university 7 years ago, he spent 30 plus years leading major IT projects as a certified project manager in both a consultant and a customer role. Today's presentation will follow the following format. The presentation will last anywhere between 40 and 45 minutes with time left over in Q&A. Everyone will be on mute, but feel free to post your questions in the Q&A window. But we're probably going to hold the questions until the end. There's a lot of content to go through. If you want to ask a question live at the end, feel free to use the raise hand feature. I'll take you off mute. But when you're done asking a question, I ask that you go back on mute. That way, we're not hearing any background noise. We also encourage you to use the chat feature to talk to each other. Again, use the Q&A to ask Joe a question. As usual, the webinar is being recorded and will be available on the EDUCAUSE ITSM website within 5 business days. Without further ado, I'll turn it over to Joe.
All right. Thanks, Mitch. So I'm Joe Fugere, and up here in this beautiful state of Alaska. As Mitch said, I have 2 main teams I'm for the service director for, and that is really the front line of IT, as we call it, the front door, so that's the service desk and also the field services, which handles AV and desktop. So today's presentation, I really wanted to accomplish 2 things out of it. One is if you're not familiar with experience management, to give you an overview or maybe a little education on what that is. It's one of the most buzzing fields right now, as it's continued to morph over the last 3 or 4 years. But I'm going to spend some time. I want to thank up front. I want to thank the company who is doing most of the training around this, Experience CoLab. They have allowed me to go ahead and use some of their slides to help with that education. And then I'm going to blend that with, what did we do here at the university over the last 1.5 years to accomplish some of these things. And so I hope, as I said, you get something out of this. You walk away with some things, some good ideas. And of course, if you ever want to contact me here at the university, we could definitely get you that information. So that said, I'm going to jump now. Let's go to the agenda. Okay, so first, as I said, I'm going to start with just what is experience management. I'm going to talk a little bit about the perceived landscape, where we were here at the university before experience management, and then what we did to embrace it, and also using what they call the experience optimization framework to implement. And then also at the end of that, we're going to sort of talk about what's next for UAAIT. Now that we've accomplished what we've done and we've gone full cycle around the framework, what are we doing now? And then also just talk about our current XM culture. This whole presentation is about building that culture within IT. And the importance here is that, I've heard a lot of folks who have gone to the classes and they come back the next year and said, oh, well, no one had budget to do this, and there wasn't the opportunity. And we bypassed all of that by basically eating our own dog food. We just came back and did some things very small, and I'm going to get into that in a second, but just started small and grew it, within ourselves so that we can understand how this works. And after a year and a half, we're now at a point we could take this out to other departments. So, and then at the end, I'm just going to give you a recap of the 10 steps to get started with experience management. So, as I said, I want to put a copyright here. Thank XLA. Well, they're now called Experience Collab, but they were called XLA Collab at the time of these slides. They have allowed me to present some of their slides and use them in this presentation. So, starting off, over the last 10 years, there was first a focus on customer service, and then that turned to your customer satisfaction, your CSAT scores, and now it's morphed into customer experience, employee experience, vendor experience. The key word is experience, and so I just wanted to start with just a recap of customer service just being a single event or transaction, right? Where we've helped somebody, and how do we do? How was the service that we provided? And then the second one, customer satisfaction, CSAT, a metric that helps business determine how they're servicing their customers, how they're interacting with your staff, and then any other touch points. Surveys are usually used to deliver that, right? And now customer experience is not about one transaction or just a metric on, the service we provided and, how good did we do that service, but it's a complete journey. It's a journey from start to finish that a customer is constantly looking at your brand and you as a company. And with social media and doing all these reviews on products and things like that, it's so important that companies are monitoring those and responding to those, because again, it's a journey. As I said, it starts with initial awareness and goes all the way through post-purchase care. So, simply put, what is experience management? And it's how someone remembers an event and how it made them feel. So we're talking about sentiment, okay? In a quote here, people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And that is it's a critical part of experience management. How easy was it? How hard was it? Did you feel it was worth your time? All those things that are around sentiment. In the past, we've ignored all those, but with the industry changing, social media, all these things are putting pressure on companies to say, hey, you might have crossed all the I's and T's, but you know what? It was a terrible experience for me, right? And so we have to measure that. So experience is determined, over time, as I said, cumulative moments over time. It's not about one transaction. It's not about the first time they come in and experience your company or your university in this case. It's beyond that. We call these cumulative moments over time. And so what that looks like is, and this was just an example we had on a slide of purchasing a new car. You start off with, what do I want to buy? What do I want to look at? And then, what kind of car do I need? And miles per hour to work, as far as how much it's going to cost and long. And then, any problems or faults. And then, all the way to, they fixed it, I'm happy. And then, feedback and just, and then there's some cycles in here, right? So overall, what was your experience through this? It might have started great, but it might have ended terrible, right? You're excited at the beginning. We call that experience anticipation. It's a new car and it's all, great marketing and everything. And then you get it and then things start happening and you go to the dealer and the dealer doesn't service you well. And, you start your experience with that dealership or that make or model of that car may change because of those experiences. So reviewing only one moment in time are going to give you false positives and false negatives. It's the cumulative journey that you have to track and continue to watch. So why does it matter? As I said earlier, our economy shifted basically to one that manages services that offer experiences that matter to people. The bigger companies out there today, that's very important where they're driving that. Many companies also are monitoring and tracking customer sentiment and experience while they're transacting with them. Not just guessing what that is. They're instantly trying to measure and feel the customer sentiment in that transaction. So it's cumulative, right? It shapes people's opinions. It has consequences, good or bad, right? And it's about the outcomes that you're producing at your university. It's not the steps in the process anymore. It's what are we producing as an outcome for that student, for that faculty, or for that staff member. And so with experience, of course, think about it, perception really is reality, right? If a student's having a tough time getting their computer to work, and we're supposed to be this shop that's going to take care of everything, but they're suffering in silence there, they're going to look at it and say, hey, well, that IT department is supposed to be great. I don't see that. It's, reality to me is that they're not so great. And they can't fix my problem, right? So anyways, that is another key factor is that, it's these perceptions now that we have to try to manage. So this is where, that's your education part of today, today's presentation. I am gonna talk about the framework in a second and how we use that framework. But hopefully that gives you just a little bit about, this thing called experience management. So let me give you an idea before we even jumped into experience, the perceived landscape and culture that we had here at the University of Alaska Anchorage. It was our team was excelling, right? We were just providing outstanding service. We would be running metrics. Metrics are looking good. We did benchmarks against other universities. We were like in the top 20%. We're really making a difference. So employees were happy. We were hearing from some students, but not all. But hey, those students, we felt, yep, everybody was happy. We were doing a great job. The CIO would come back from going to meetings with some leadership around campus, and he's like, man, you guys are knocking it out of the park. IT's performance is great. I'm getting compliment and compliment and compliment. Our CSAT scores were 4.9 out of 5. IT field services, while they're out in the field, they're hearing the voice of customer and they're receiving real positive feedback. And as I said, our KPIs were being met. So when somebody looks at that, you would say, man, you guys are awesome. You guys are knocking it out of the park. No question, until, I wanted to show you, let me show you some of the feedback we're getting from our surveys, right? I mean, look at those comments. I mean, they're just like, and these are real live comments. We get them on a weekly basis. It's like, you're patient. You're so grateful for you guys. You guys are amazing, A+. I'm used to good experiences, but because, this solution I needed quickly, I, was not optimistic that you'd help me and get me there, but you did. You saved an entire class. So, all these are these amazing stories, right? That my team has done for our customers. But then every once in a while, we'd start seeing these ones that we thought we hit a home run, but then we got called out. So for instance, this is a real live example where I had a scenario where a user emails in a request to get some help setting up 2 softwares. It was an email that came in, and so our service desk responded within minutes. emailed back and said, yep, here you go, here are your KB articles, all good. You know, this should be self-explanatory. Just go through your KBs and close the ticket, right? Great service, right? Was it a great customer experience? I mean, we did hit our KPIs on that, response time and mean time to resolve, woohoo, right? However, yeah, this is what happened. A customer actually sent us a negative survey. And he said, you know what? Great, thank you, but nothing was done to help me. It was just sending an email and closing your ticket. You know, there's nothing you did. It wasn't a service. The team just looked at the ticket and sent me some directions and closed the ticket. So was the customer happy? Did they have a good experience? No, obviously this customer was not, you know, technically literate enough to do it on their own. They needed some handholding. They needed some guidance. And what I understand from this ticket also, it wasn't for that person. It was for somebody else. It was for a faculty member that they were trying to help with. So this, you know, and we had several of these, maybe a couple a month, and we started looking at these, going, well, you know, our scores aren't showing this. What's the problem? And are we missing something? You know, so we started hearing other things from other places, and you know, our VCAS would hear something out in the field, tell our CIO, but there was still something that just wasn't right. So this is where enters experience management, using the framework I talked about. So I took the XLA foundations. XLAs were interesting to me. I was like, what's the difference between SLA and XLA? And really the class awakened to me about this whole experience management thing. And I was like, oh, wait, I'm starting to see the trend here. Why are we getting these negative comments out of the blue? And it all came down to the experience. What did they experience? And so immediately I came back and I was like, you know what? This is something we need to dive into. So I got a task force together and started meeting 45 minutes. And the first thing that we started doing was just learning more about experience management. And the key thing, again, is customer service does not measure sentiment around a transaction. Experience management does. And what we found out was this was the missing link. This is what we needed to start measuring. So as I said several times, in taking it's a class by HDI, it's put on by XLA, I'm sorry, Experience Collab, several courses, and I'll talk about them later, but the first one was the foundations. They introduced this optimization framework. And so we start with evangelize, starting to inspire your ecosystem, right? Trying to understand what is this and how can we use it? And then explore to basically see where you're at now, and then envision to say where you're going. And then enable is where you start creating things to help you measure both sentiment and operations. So that would be your XLA. And then you put your XLAs into practice and you execute. And then finally you embrace and you basically review your scoring and see how things are going. And then, you know, start looking to see where you're going to go from there. You're going to tackle a new area. You're going to partner with a business entity. What are you going to do? And that's what we have done. We've gone full circle. So we have made it to embrace. And now we're talking to our employee experience department, evangelizing about their needs and their project, and if they're interested in going down this road. So, all right. So again, first you start with your strategies and ambitions. That covers the first three phases: how to measure experience, enable and execute, and then how to govern experience. All right. So start at the beginning. Okay, we formed a task force, 8 members, taught the essentials of XM, sent them to some conferences and some classes, and got some training. And then we started to jump into the explore stage to see, hey, what do we want to do with this? So the first thing we did is we looked at what persona do we want to really focus on. And we knew the least about our students compared to our faculty and staff. So we chose students. It's also part of our UAA mission for accreditation, and then students first is our mission. So we wanted to dive into that and make students first in our organization. And also, that would affect revenue growth and student success investment. Excuse me. And says one we knew least about. So we focused on within the student population, the exact persona we focused on was just your traditional student, which basically does those things, consistently attends semester, takes summers off, and graduates on time. So that's where we started. And so now you need to start looking at the tools that you have to look for trends. So you're analyzing data to figure out what is this, what is it about students I need to look at? If you have a student survey, you can look at that. If you don't have anything, then I'd suggest you start with a survey and ask about their experiences in working with IT, right? So for us, there were 3 elements that we had. We had a campus kickoff survey. It was just for students, mainly newer students, and that was about wants and needs. What do they want? What do they need to be successful here at the university as far as equipment, as far as support, all those things. Second thing is we had our ticket system, right? So we were pulling tickets involving students or software that the students were using and looking at the difficulties or problems they were having. Last was IT ticket surveys that students submitted and looking at those survey results. To, again, look for the trends, look for the common problems. Was it a certain piece of software such as RP Now that does all their proctoring, remote proctoring, where they, that was something they were struggling with, and what was it about that they were struggling with? And so we did that analysis using those. And these are some of the things that we came up with. I'm not going to necessarily cover them all here, but basically, yeah, people were deemed Wi-Fi as the most important asset that we provided, right? 68%. Other things were like 66% used personal devices, 52% used Apple devices. That was higher than what we thought. And then, yeah, seeing a drop in in tickets in our LMS, told the story there. Why is that? So anyways, yeah, we started pulling out all these trends from the analysis we did. And then we started looking at, okay, for tickets, for instance, where are most of the tickets coming from? Is it something within our network, or is it as it says here, 21% were from our Blackboard learning management system, some were email, some were UA account, so on and so forth. So we looked at those percentages for students and played that into the rest of the data that we had. The second thing we did, which was very, very, very interesting, was the student journey map. Okay, so we started with a student journey map that said, hey, someone's interested in our university. What are they doing? Okay, how are they learning more? And we track that through a website, recruitment activities, and then they decide they want to go ahead and submit their application. They get admitted. They do placement testing all the way through. And then, yeah, and then they become this recurring thing every year where, they register for course, they acquire textbooks. So we looked at every one of these touch points that we had here. And we did 2 things. So that's your front part there as far as coming on board with the university. And we looked at every one of those touch points and we said, hey, what are we doing now in IT to support this? Right? And from a student perspective, what could we be doing better? So by looking at that analytical data that we had from tickets and from surveys, we're trying to figure out how can we improve our services in this area? So yeah, so this is what we did for every touch point. We then went to the middle for recurring, right? They deal with now, once they're a student, they do this every semester. And did the same thing. We looked at every one of those and said, hey, future IT support, what can we be doing? Okay. And then, yeah, we went through, and then the last part did the same thing. So from this, we basically had good data and we had our trends. there are other ways to do this, but this is the ones that, we did. And through that, we came up with initiatives, student-focused initiatives that we thought would make a difference. And again, talking about at the very beginning, I said it's cumulative over time, and that journey map sort of shows that cumulative over time as far as their journey here at the university and all the things they have to do. And so from that, we came up with this list of projects, top initiatives. But we didn't feel that was good enough. That's just what we came up with. So then we went around and met with other groups that were student facing, our big group being student success. And we talked to them about what are some of their initiatives and then shared our list, and they helped us prioritize what they thought would be a big difference. So one of the first ones was being able to do SMS through chat. We knew that would be a home run. From our surveys, we saw, most of them have a cell phone, most of them, use SMS to do their communications. And, we were only at 20% of the population that was students. And so we knew this would be a big home run and that we'd hear from more students and less suffering in silence, if you will. But after we came up with this list, as I said, we went around, we talked to different departments, and we were able to prioritize those lists. So once we had that list of prioritization, now you got to really figure out, is it worth doing? Is it worth the time? Is it worth the money? What's the impact? What's the outcomes that we're hoping to get out of this? And so that's your experience ambition. So yes, we went through that, coming up with the vision, strategy, commitments, outcomes, and then started building an XLA for each of them. And so from that, we were able to determine, after we went through that and did the 7 XLAs, and again, understanding the economic values and the business values going with each of them, we were able to come up with our fiscal year 24 3 initiatives that we were going to focus on. As I say here, it's the defining the experience, right? So this is what we want. What are we trying to stage here? What's the outcomes? And as I said, each of those will be a separate XLA. Again, economic values need to be achieved, right? Your objectives and goals. Do not do this inside out. Very important. Meet with your business partners. This is what we talked to them about when we went through each of these ambitions. I'm sorry, not ambitions, initiatives, and got feedback from them. So involve your business leaders when you're doing that, when you're at that point. Here's a quick slide to tell you, I'm going to talk about the XLA now, which is very important to experience management, the difference between them, where SLA focuses on process and value chain and measures transactions, and you're all probably very familiar with SLAs. The XLAs, however, they really focus on the outcomes and economic values, sentiment, as I mentioned earlier. Very important. How do you measure sentiment, right? Cumulative moments over time, and so on and so forth. Wants and needs. So here is what usually happens when you get into the XLA world. As I said earlier, man, you look at our SLAs, you look at our metrics, our KPIs, everything look green as green could be. However, when you talked about sentiment and you talked about outcomes, we weren't hitting the mark. I call that a watermelon metric, right? We think things are good within IT. When you get out to the field and you start measuring some of these things, it's red, right? Your goal is to get green and green, which is the line there, right? Sentiment's good, transactions are good, everyone's happy. And sometimes you have the reverse watermelon, where the customer says it's a great thing, but when you look at the metrics, man, we're not as efficient and productive as we should be. Tickets are taking too long to resolve, and we have a backlog, and but our customers were happy with the way the transactions went. So sometimes you have that. Again, the goal is to feed the lime, as they say. All right, so here is a mock-up of an XLA. You start with your experience ambition, which we talked about, right? What is it that we want to do? And then what are some of the sentiment XIs, which are experience indicators? What are those things? What do we want customers to feel? What are those outcomes we're after? Who's responsible for that? And then for that delivery of that, and then how is it going to be, how is the operational side going to measure that through KPIs and metrics? So that is, in a nutshell, that's what an XLA is. And so you can see it has both the sentiment measurements and your operational measurements. Right? So our first one we came up with was IT chat support. Okay. So what was our desired experience? Well, we wanted to simplify and increase student engagement. That was first and foremost. Simplify and increase the engagement with IT by offering additional communication channels so that they can use their preferred communication method. As we heard from our surveys, that is their preferred method for communication, right? And if any of you have teenagers, I'm sure you know the same. So next, what were those things we were trying to measure, right? The outcomes we were trying to get to. So, so we had an automated bot at the beginning of this, and it just helped them steer a little bit, but also provided KB articles, things like that. So we want to know, hey, did that help you? Did that get your issue resolved that you didn't have to text with a technician? Were you able to get your issue resolved using the IT chat support, right? So if you weren't able to do it through the automation, did you get it resolved through there? How hard or easy was it for you to use the IT chat support function? And do you prefer texting with an agent compared to a phone call? Now that they've done it, what is better? And so these are the 4 questions, and they turn into survey questions every time we do a chat support. They're different from ticket surveys. These are focused on the chat support. And then what are some of the things we're looking at on the IT side? So we've got the chat survey, we've got automated agent stats and successes. Our chat FCR, the number of chat contacts, we expect to see that go up. Net effort score, and then, the chat survey, as I mentioned earlier. So those are the operational KPIs or metrics that we'll be measuring for each one of these. Really quick, a second example, MFA for students. We knew that we had to do this, but we wanted to build value in it and show students that, there's a reason we need to do this for your benefit. So we want to provide students peace of mind by delivering a seamless, secure, and user-friendly MFA solution, ensuring their accounts and personal information are secure and protected. So what do you want to know about that? Well, were you able to complete the MFA setup without contacting us? Because we're providing all kinds of KBs and so on and so forth so that they could do it themselves. We want to know if that was successful. We also want to know how secure, seamless, and easy was it to use the MFA? And lastly, do you feel that your account is more secure now because of it? We want to know what they think. How do they feel about it? And then again, same way, UAIT is responsible for all 3 of these, and we're using our metrics to track the operational side of it. So that's 2 examples of XLAs that we were able to develop for 2 of the ambitions or initiatives. So now we're at the execute phase, right? So we're here, right? And now we're going to put our XLAs into the operation. So, we've explored, I'm going to just review real quick. We've explored, see where we're at. We see where we want to go. We came up with our initiatives. And now we've enabled, so we've created our XLAs, which I just showed you. And now we're actually into execution. So we launch the initiative. We have the surveys ready to go to track this stuff. But now, how do you take what you have in your XLA and report on it on a monthly basis? And that is called an experience resource matrix. So it's taking both elements, both your sentiment and your operations, and scoring them in the same really we use a spreadsheet, but scoring that on a monthly basis and then weighting that score and combining it to give us our final score. So, so it aligns subjective and objective data, identifies direct and indirect indicators of experience, and aligns the survey questions with the KPIs. This is what it looks like. Okay, that top number is your overall weighted XM score, right? And so the columns are months. And so in order to get to that score, you have to have your two metrics down below that you're looking at. You have your experience indicators, your XIs. Those are those survey questions around sentiment. All right. And then under that, you have your operational data. And so, so for instance, under experience indicator, those 4 rows that you see are your 4 XIs that you have that we went over, the survey questions there. And so for each one of those, we score those and put them in here. And then there's an average up top, that bigger, the number in the bigger font, that's your average for that month. And then same with the operation. We have all these metrics we're tracking. Each row is a metric. And same way, we score those and then you have an overall number. And as I said, you could see the greens, yellows, and the reds. And this is just an example I threw out here, but you could see what's going on. Something's going on in starting in March with one of your experience indicators and also through your KPI. Something's going on. You're continuing to look at that and track that and seeing how it's trending. And then all of a sudden you start hitting your reds in June. So, obviously there's something going on causing that to decrease. And so that's where this will alert you to that, and you need to dig a little deeper and figure out, what's going on campus. Did we have some major outage? Did something that we did made it harder for our staff or our faculty? But this is that trending tool you can look at to basically see how you're doing. So that is an ERM. All right, so here's currently where we're at. Okay, finished. As I said, we finished executing those 2, and now we're embracing where we're measuring those 2 initiatives. So, but keep in mind, we did 7 XLAs, and so now I'm able to go back and basically say, okay, what was the next one on the list? Okay, and so now we can enable and then execute, right? So we have the XLA, it's all tidied up. We've got to create our survey questions for the next one, and then we execute. And we want to do that about every 3 months for the rest of this fiscal year. And then in the embrace stage, I already mentioned, we're there. We're measuring our first 2 initiatives, and now we're also at the evangelize stage where we're looking for another persona. Are we going to choose another student persona? Maybe one that students that work during the day and just taking classes at night? Do we want to look at staff? Do we want to look at faculty? As I mentioned earlier, we've decided that we're going to partner with our employee experience group and start at the top again. We'll start with evangelizing. And now it's not IT driving it. Instead, we have a business partner now. And the business partner is driving it, but we are the educated ones because we've been through this process, and now we know what to do and how to do it. We know what works, what doesn't work, what's effective, what's not effective. And so we're in a good position now where I have 7 employees that are very experienced in this. And so we're going to grow the team. And this is where we talk about culture a little bit, where we're going to take what we've done and evangelize that more to the team and add more members to our team. Perhaps some members will drop off, but that's the beginning of growing this culture that I talked about. And so right now with the folks I have on my team, which are mostly from my team, I have one from my counterparts team, which is really to keep the lights on team for networking and application support and stuff like that. But we're constantly putting on our XM hats, and every incident, every plan that we're doing. So if we've got a complaint come in, you know, we immediately put ourselves in the eyes of the customer. Through the eyes of the customer, we're trying to figure out, oh, no, that was a terrible experience. And, and so how do we fix that? And how do we make it better so others don't experience this? The team is using the lingo, right? Everyone's talking XM now, right? So this culture is being built. I mean, I don't have to say it anymore. I was saying it for the first year. Every time something happened, okay, put on your XM hat. What does it look like? What does it feel like? And now they're talking to me. They're using, hey, I'm concerned about the customer's experience here. We got to do something to make this better. I love it. I love it. I don't have to say it anymore. So it's starting to build, it's starting to build this culture of really putting our eyes straight to the customer and how they interact with us. We start every conversation, I said in the second bullet, what did the customer experience? We start there and ends up, well, what can we do differently to make it so they don't have the bad experience and also that they have a better experience, right? So those are some of the things going on with our current culture. And which takes me to the last two slides for you, and that is just a review of what I just covered. And really, if you take anything back, it's like, well, how do we get started? Again, start with evangelizing, take some classes. There's a lot of material out there. You've heard probably a lot about customer experience. Maybe you start there. Just look at CX. That's where I started. I started years ago taking a CX boot camp, and that's got me started on what is this customer experience thing. And then I took, as I said, several classes from HDI, and I gave you the website there. They have an essentials class, which just is a basic class about experience. What is that? Mainly created for managers and higher ups, CIOs, and just understanding what is this whole thing. But then you get into foundations. It's a 3-day course, and then practitioner. So I took the foundations. I got certified as foundations, and I took the practitioner course. And I think it was so new that they're coming out with the certification test, I think, in the next couple of months. But they have I don't know if you're all familiar with HDI, but they do have a conference coming up here in about a month that they are teaching the foundations course. So it might be something, just go to their website and look it up. Experience Collab, experiencecollab.com. Okay, those are the ones who are the entity that comes up with all the materials, does the certifications, all that kind of stuff. XLA TV, XLA Cafe, two other places where there's information free of charge there, so on and so forth. Secondly, start small. Pick a persona where your department's struggling to provide a good service. Figure out what that is. Maybe it is students for you, or maybe it's faculty, or maybe it's a subset of faculty, or maybe it's staff. Figure out what that is and say, hey, let's focus on this. Let's figure out what we could be doing better to support that department or that team. Build a journey map. Once you decide what that persona is, build a journey map. And again, lots of information out there, how to do journey maps. It's, you go to lots of websites. One of the ones I learned was Chief Technology Officer 2.0. They talked a lot about journey mapping there, but then, as I said, if you have access to LinkedIn training, there's a ton of things out there for journey mapping. But yeah, go ahead and start journey mapping and pull some folks in with you to do that. And look at those different touch points. And as I said, we then looked at each touch point and just document what you currently do for that at that stage of the game. What are you guys providing your student or your faculty at that stage of the game? And then what can you be doing better? Think brainstorming, what can you do better? And then get some feedback, right? And then start looking for your data, your gold mine, right? Your gold mine's in the data. So look at surveys, service tickets. If you don't have data, then do create a new survey. See how you guys are doing, right? And then after that, create your list of experience initiatives that your department can provide that will help your chosen persona be successful. You're now in the envision stage. Meet with the departments that represent or work closely with your persona and validate your trend analysis. Help you prioritize your work. Still in envision, right? Plan your final list of XM initiatives, timing and budget, right? Look at all those things. You got to look at timing, you got to look at budget. Is it worth the money? Determine your ambition, right? Those are all part of your ambition, your experience ambition. What's the outcomes we're trying to produce here? What does it take to do that? And then seek approval to move forward. Then you move to execute, get those XLAs going, and your survey questions, your experience indicators, and then initiate, execute, right? Your projects, and then measure both your sentiment and your operational data. There is another new data that they've added to this called T data. And I don't know if you're familiar with things like DEX tools and others where they have transactional data that you can also add to this. We don't have a DEX tool, but there may be other things that you have from transactional data that would help you here. And you can add that to your experience matrix. That's a third element of what you're measuring. So that is the end of my presentation. I really hope that you got something out of this. It will be shared. And so, it's a lot of information, but hopefully I've given you enough to be interested in looking further.
Thanks, Joe. This was great. And we have one question in the chat referring back to your matrix. I know you said it was just example data, but Chris Bard wondering why the overall score was higher than the either the experience and the operational data score. And maybe it was just example data, but why was it higher?
It was.
Yeah,
it was example data. So this is just a chart that they threw into the training. We are here at the university. We have it, and it needs a little more work, but yeah. So yeah, if they made trying to see here where the operate. Yeah, so I see. You're saying that the operational.
The overall score was higher than either the experience indicator numbers.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I don't. So again, that's a weighted score. So I don't know how they're weighting that. It's taking, in this case, you've got the bigger numbers like the 6.7 and the 6.75 that define those two groups. So your operational and your XI. What's not in here is your T data. And I purposely didn't put it in here. So there's another section for T data. If you have something like a DEX tool, something that's measuring transactions, that would also get added in there for your weighted score. So apologize for that. That is a little confusing. I didn't catch that, but yeah, I just did not put in the T data. But I just wanted to show you an example though of how one worked. But thanks for catching that. I'll fix that in my next slide.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, and just for context, transactional data for like DEX tools, think of companies like NextThinks, which is one of the leaders in the industry. NICE, there are a few others out there that basically have an agent on a digital device, a laptop or whatnot, and sort of monitor when things are sort of going awry and may offer suggestions on whether rebooting or clearing your cache or that stuff, just to help to make the experience on your digital device much better. So the other question too that came in chat, or sorry, Q&A was, are there any free resources? And I pointed the person asked the question to ITXM framework, which is a happy signals thing, and they offer some free training. But Joe, can you recommend any other free training?
What I would do is, those two sites I mentioned. Let me go back to that.
They're in the deck, right?
The XLA, XLA TV, and XLA Cafe. So those are done by Experience Collab, and they talk about the different things that different companies have done. And so when you go through those, you really, it's going to mimic what I did today in a way. You'll have a good taste of, the framework. You'll have a good taste of, how they started measuring experience. But I don't know of any like course you could take that's free right now, because it's really limited. Experience CoLab, as I said, owns that with TSO, and I think TSO provides the training. And so again, you can get that through HDI, is one of the partners that I know of that does that training. And I don't know if any of you have been to an HI conference or has looked at training through HDI, but Rayanne Bruno is just a awesome instructor. She is basically has all the experience classes. She does all of those and does a great job with that.
Yeah, if you pay attention to your inbox, or you look at like Bright Horse or ITSM Academy, which is a well-known training vendor, they'll offer sort of an introductory ITX experience management class, and I encourage you to sign up for those classes, even if it just gives you a flavor. And then, Happy Signals, while they're a vendor, they have an experience management framework as well called ITXM, that will give you a basic introduction to experience management. And these are all sort of built on the same sort of framework, right? Experience data, operational data, transactional data, and developing experience levels. I don't see any other questions in the chat or Q&A. It is 2:54, so we'll wrap up the presentation. Thanks, Joe, again for sharing. Maybe next time we could talk a little bit about how to actually get those metrics, right? You had a beautiful matrix there, and we know it's just example data, but I know I would be interested in how you aggregate all of those particular metrics to come up with a cumulative score, and how do you bring that data together in a visual that everyone can see and use. So again, thank you for your insight, your presentation. I want to thank the audience for attending. At the end of this presentation, you will get a survey to share feedback on how you like this presentation. I encourage you to please take that. We use that feedback to plan future events. And if you have something you want to share with this community group, reach out to me directly. I'll help you plan the event. Maybe Joe can attest that it was a very easy process. I do all the hard work for you: planning, communication, scheduling, and hosting. So yeah, if you've got a voice, I want to help amplify it. So again, thank you, Joe. Thank you again to the audience for attending. A reminder that Joe's contact information is in the deck, and you will be receiving a copy of the deck and the recording within 5 business days. Everyone have a great weekend, and talk to you soon. Thanks. Bye, everyone.